Today we talk about Dungeon, which is a pretty old game, several decades old. It is an important game, I believe, in the history of gaming because it has to be one of the first dungeon crawlers that came out, if not the very first one, the one that launched the entire genre, but I'm not sure about that. That's just my own guess. Dungeon crawler, so this is a game in which players will play the role of heroes traveling through a dungeon, looking for monsters to kill and trying to loot the treasures that are in the dungeon and that belong to the monsters. What's more noble and more heroic than enriching oneself by appropriating treasures that have been gathered by the monsters? But we don't know how they got those treasures, so there is the entire philosophical point of stealing from thieves. If they're thieves indeed, I think I'm getting a bit lost here. In any case, point being that the game has been released recently in a new edition by Wizards of the Coast. The game has been graphically updated. I have no idea if there have been any changes in the rules because I did not play the original game or any of the following editions. I know that the question here is gameplay still worth playing? Is gameplay still going to be interesting, exciting, fun for us, for gamers who are now acquainted with the descendants of this one, with the games that have been made after this one, in the tradition of this one? Is it still worth hanging out with the ancestors once you have become a good friend of the descendants? So gameplay really is the question here, not components, because this game just looks beautiful. The Wizards of the Coast edition is a beauty. Point again is, how about gameplay? Let me show you how the game plays and then we can try to answer that question. The game is played on this gorgeous mounted map, really nice. The map represents the dungeon. Here in the middle you have the area where the characters start their adventure. The dungeon is divided in 6 areas. This is area 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Yes, areas or levels 3, 4, and 5 are represented by 2 areas on the board. And these are in increasing level of difficulty. The hardest monsters and the biggest treasures are to be found in level 6, and the easiest monsters to kill and the lowest value treasures are to be found in level 1. The characters are represented by those standees there. There are 8 such standees in the game, and they represent 4 different classes. So you have 2 characters per class: Rogue, Cleric, Fighter, and Warrior. And here you see them in level of power, meaning from the least powerful to the most powerful one. So the Rogue should better stay in the lower levels of the dungeon, and the Fighter and the Wizards can go to higher levels and hunt for better and more valuable treasures. When it is your turn to activate your character, you can move your character up to 5 spaces. Characters can move in corridors, or they can enter rooms or chambers. Normal doors can be open and moved through without any particular rule, without any difficulty. Some doors are secret doors, such as this one, for example, or this one here. You need to be adjacent to the wall that has a secret door hidden behind it, and you need to roll a die. The Rogue has an easier time finding doors. There are more numbers that the Rogue can roll. That will mean that the Rogue has found the door, and now the Rogue can move through the door. Other characters, however, still have a chance, and say an unlucky Rogue will still be stuck staring at the wall without being able to find the door, whereas a lucky Wizard would be able to go through. When you enter a room or a chamber, you encounter that location and you have to draw a monster card for the level in which you are. Each level has its own monster deck and its own treasure deck. Suppose we're in level 1 and then the monster that we encounter is this one. Monsters have different numbers to hit, one for each class of heroes. You basically, after you find the monster, you encounter the monster, you attack the monster, you roll 2d6, and you need to roll the number for your category or higher. A rogue would kill the dire rat with 5 or more, the cleric with 4 or more. These two categories are for spells used by wizards, and this number here is for wizard attacking in melee. If you eliminate the monster, then you can draw a treasure for that location, so the treasure will be for the same level of the monster that you eliminated. Treasures will have a value in gold coins, and you're trying to collect as much money as possible. Some treasures may have special effects. For example, if you own this treasure here, you can move through all secret doors without having to roll. And very valuable treasures are the magic swords. When you find a sword, you roll 2 dice, you look at the indications on the card itself, and that will tell you whether the magic sword is a +1 or +2 magic sword. You will place a counter there to indicate that, and then you will place the card or the treasure by your character. These magic swords are pretty important because you can add their modifier to the dice that you roll when you're trying to defeat an enemy. If you did not defeat the enemy, however, the enemy gets to attack you, then you have to roll 2 dice to resolve that attack. You look at that table with the possible outcomes of the die roll, and possible results are that the enemy misses, or that the enemy wounds you, or even maybe the enemy kills you. Negative effects usually mean that you will have to drop some of your treasures, and you drop them in the location in which you have been attacked. In some cases, you may also have to return to the Great Hall and start over from there. Treasures that have been dropped by heroes can be retrieved by other heroes or by the same hero once the monster that is now guarding those treasures has been eliminated. When you destroy an enemy in a room, you place a cleared marker there. Nothing will happen in that room anymore. Simply there are no monsters or treasures to be encountered there. Chambers may have up to 3 monsters. That means that it takes 3 cleared counters before you can move through the chamber without any negative effect. Also, chambers are tricky because if you defeat a monster there, you do not draw a treasure card. All you can do is to pick up the treasures that other heroes may have dropped in that location. Wizards also have spells. Spells are represented by these cards. They're all the same. All the cards for a certain spell are exactly the same on both sides. And the spells are Teleport, Lightning Bolt, and Fireball. You roll a die at the beginning of the game as the wizard, and that tells you the number of spells that you have. So you may be an extremely powerful wizard with a lot of spells, or an extremely weak one, depending on what you roll. And then during the game, you can attack with a lightning bolt or with a fireball. You spend that card and you simply use the stats for the spell that you're using when you are rolling. Teleport allows you to move to a location in the same level in which you are, or 1 level lower. This may be useful because from time to time as a wizard you will have to return to the Great Hall, because once you use a spell you have to spend that card, and in order to replenish your hand of cards you need to return to the Great Hall and spend a full turn there. There are a couple of other possible effects. For example, some of the monster cards actually represent traps that may force you, for example, to lose a turn or two. But generally speaking, this is how the game works. The characters alternate moving around the dungeon, trying to eliminate monsters and to loot the dungeon, to collect treasures. Each class of hero has a specific amount of treasures that class need to collect in order to win the game. The first player to reach a total amount of treasures matching or exceeding the required amount for his class is the winner of the game. Luisa, who is here with me today, enjoys the game more than I do, but she's 6 months old. Even she says that the game is a little too light for her taste, though. Definitely it is too light for my taste. This is not a game that really has any relevant decision to make. You can affect the course of the events by choosing certain rooms other than others. Maybe you try to clear some rooms so that the opponents don't have any treasures left to find there. But still, what you find in the room, how the encounter is resolved, this is completely random. You do not really have any way to affect your odds of succeeding. You may gain a lot of treasures and be one treasure from winning. Your character is still not any wiser or stronger than the character was at the beginning of the game. You still have the same chances of succeeding, or maybe being killed by a monster, losing a lot of treasures, and then you have to start over. The wizard has a little more strategy because, of course, the wizard can choose spells, and the wizard has to choose when to use a spell. But still, that is not enough of a factor to really affect the situation, to affect the feel of the game, which is one of utter randomness. You move, roll a die, see what happens. The game is labeled for players 8 years or older. It could even be played by younger players, younger gamers. I don't see any problem with that. And in that sense, it could be a good introduction for your kids to fantasy gaming. Maybe now they get excited about playing a game in which they just roll a die and they defeat a big ugly monster. One of the advantages is that, yes, if you're playing with your kids may win and you may lose, precisely because even you don't even need to let them win. They may honestly win because they may just get luckier than you are. So maybe as a game that you play with your kids now, you get them curious and interested in fantasy gaming, and then by the time they're 12 you can play Mage Knight with them. But other than that, I don't really see this as a game that you will probably want to bring to a game night and make it one of the main courses of your game night. I play games that are even lighter than this one. It is not a matter of lightness of rules being uncomplicated. I play games that are lighter than this one, such as Zombie Dice or Merchant Dice, Ghosts, but those are fillers that you resolve in 5, 10, 15 minutes. Dungeon is a game that, especially if you play with a large number of players, will take much longer. It will be one of the main games that you play in a night. Also, if I were to play this game with 8 players, I just can't imagine myself having to wait through other people's turns to see what happens then. And then a lot of rooms will be cleared before the game goes back to me. Then it would be even more annoying just to have to move around the dungeon without having anything to do, really. So it is probably a game that you will want to play with your kids, if you want to play it at all. If you're playing it with your group of gamers, I would say, if you have a group of gamers, if you are interested in gaming enough to be looking for information about Dungeon rather than just picking it up at a store, if you're watching this video review, then probably you are a gamer that is serious enough about gaming that will find this game a little too light, a little too lacking in decisions and in strategy. If you want to play with your friends, you can play it as a beer and pretzel game, but maybe in a night in which I've had more beer than pretzel.